but we still have another minute before we get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to AICC's webinar today, E-commerce and Corrugated Packaging Post-COVID. It's a panel discussion. We'll be having Ron Sassine as a key speaker, Ted Simotis, Mark Mathis, Louis DeJesus, and Kyle DeJesus will be also joining us for part of this discussion. I am Taryn Pyle, and I'll be hosting this call today. And if you are new to AICC webinars, we want to welcome you. AICC is the Independent Packaging Association dedicated to uniting and celebrating the success of inspired independent packaging companies through education and networking opportunities in person, online, and in print. When you invest and engage, AICC delivers success. The call today will be 60 minutes long. 75 minutes long. A link to the recording will be sent to you via email no later than Monday of next week. This will be sent to the email provided when you registered. In the event we go over the time allotted, any other questions can be sent via email, and AICC staff or the presenter will follow up individually. With technology, there is always a possibility of losing a connection, sound, or viewing of the presentation. AICC will keep you posted on the status of any problems using the chat feature. However, if you are having problems, it probably is a problem on your end, and you'll need to disconnect and try to sign back on using the link that we provided. I do want to give you a little bit of housekeeping education right now as it relates to Zoom. We are on a Zoom platform. If you take your mouse and scroll down, move it down to the bottom of your screen, a bar should pop up with several icons. Some of you may have this bar on the top of your screen, but typically it's on the bottom. If you see, you can have there's a mute feature, stop and start video. If you start it and you have a camera in your computer, we will be able to see you. If you are on a phone, I think you can also use start and stop video as well, yes. And then if you go to the scroll to the right, you'll see an icon that says participants. If you click on that and open that, you'll see a list of all the participants that are on the call. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that list, there is an option to raise and lower your hand. We will be using this feature. You can ask questions, you can respond to things using the hand feature. At the end of the presentations. If you scroll to the right, there's the chat feature. If you click on that and open it up, you will see the opportunity. You have the opportunity there to type messages to the group. You can type it to everyone. You can type it to one particular person. There you can type questions and we will be asking them out loud after the presentations are over and reading them out so that the presenters and the panelists can answer them. If you have any questions, you can always scroll down to my name, Taryn Pyle, and send one to me privately, and I'm also more than willing to answer the call for you as well. Answer the question, post the question as well. As we begin, please remember AICC is an international trade association, and as such, members are bound to uphold the letter and spirit of all applicable competition and antitrust laws, including those of the U.S. and Canada. During this meeting, there will be no discussion allowed concerning prices, customers, customer or market allocations, specific accounts, discounts, terms, and all other matters prohibited by law. And now I'd like to introduce you to Ron Sassine. Ron Sassine is the principal of Hudson Windsor LLC, a boutique consultancy focused on packaging strategy, packaging innovations, and supply chain transparency. The firm draws an extensive experience in consumer packaged goods and retail merchandising and works with a wide range of packaging manufacturers, private equity investors, and independent packaging companies. Ron is the project development lead for Crossroads Paper, the recently announced recycled containerboard mill to be located in the western United States. In addition, Ron is frequently sought out by industry groups to share his insight on issues related to packaging, innovation, manufacturing, and the evolution of retail. And Ron, I'm not going to go into everything that you've done. Suffice it to say, Walmart, Midwest-Vaco, and all kinds of other things. I'm going to just hand it right over to you.
Thank you, Taryn, and greetings all. It's great to be with you today. Thank you to the AICC for putting together this opportunity for all of us this morning. I want to just start with 3 key takeaways, things I want you to focus on as we talk, and hopefully that you'll take away from this meeting when we're done. We are seeing the flowering of omni-channel retailing. It's something that began in earnest just a number of years ago, but has really accelerated. And as we've seen over the last 4 months, gone through a massive scale up during COVID-19. We saw declines in the early part of this year, and we'll continue to see some declines across the broader corrugated market. But there are opportunities and windows of growth within that declining segment over the next year to 18 months. That follows a massive run up in 17 and 18 and a slightly softening market in 19. It means we'll face challenges, and those who are equipped will succeed. Next slide. There are 4 real critical issues that are going to determine the growth patterns of the corrugated packaging industry. Obviously, e-commerce is a big play. E-commerce is critical. It will become even more important as consumers who were in some ways hesitant to embrace e-commerce across all of their buying patterns have now adopted it and are moving forward at much faster rates. I'll show you some numbers about that as we move forward. There's a real big question, sorry, one slide back. There's a real big question about the impact of how corrugated customization is going to play out in both the areas of digital print and variable sizing. We'll touch on that as well. What lies ahead for traditional retailers, and how are they going to coexist, adopt, or expand their e-commerce portfolios, and how fast is all of this happening? If you'd asked me 3 months ago, I would have had one answer. I've got a very different answer today. Next slide. So what do the trends look like? First off, there's a really important trend moving in terms of what the overall share of e-commerce is in U.S. retail. Right now, it's about 11%, perhaps rising a bit more in the last few months, but it's still, we have many of our products, most of the overwhelming majority, still flowing to store shelves. We do see, however, data that shows that growth of e-commerce could, in the next 4 years, reach 35%. Increase 35% over where it is today. That then drives us to consider a little bit, what does that mean in the consumer packaged goods space? Because that's really where the corrugated box is critical. It's growing at 5 times the rate of conventional retail. Retail grows at a very slow, sort of organic 3-4, tops up at about 5% in a good year. But we're seeing e-commerce growing at 5 times that rate. And e-commerce and CPG is expected to double in the next 4 years. Let's look at the next slide, and I'll show you a little bit about what that trend has been. That 35% expansion we're looking at, what's fascinating about that is what's happened in the last 4 months. If we had looked out in February and predicted outcomes of 35% growth by 2023, that would have seemed reasonable. But what everybody in the CPG business and the retail analysts have observed is that we've seen growth rates in the last 3 months that are equal to everything we'd forecast for e-commerce growth in the next 4 years. Target, Walmart, Amazon, Kroger, everyone has turned in both end of first quarter and, more importantly, second quarter retail numbers that are absolutely ahead of all predictions and all projections they had for this year and next year. So we are moving at much faster adoption rates. What's important about those adoption rates is it demonstrates to consumers that they can now purchase more broadly in e-commerce items and categories that they hadn't purchased up until now. The consumer that might have experimented with a pair of shoes, another item of clothing, one-off electronics, is now growing much more comfortable with baskets of purchasing, with grocery lists, with orders being delivered to home while other orders are being picked up in store. Their familiarity and comfort level with e-commerce has been demonstrated to have expanded significantly over the past 3 months, as many of them have been either forced to adopt an e-commerce purchasing strategy or simply chosen to do it rather than venture out. Next slide. So, retail trends are driving packaging demand. You look at what Amazon grocery delivery has said just 6 months ago. It is one of Amazon's fastest growing businesses. Expanded rapidly in 2019. And we're seeing this massive shift as people continue to increase. I want to look at the 5th bullet on this slide, just because it shows us something interesting. The e-commerce basket is actually declining in value. And that's important because what it's showing is that more lower value products, i.e. food, cleaning products, other grocery items, are becoming part of the standard e-commerce purchase basket. Rather than being just expensive things that I buy on one-offs, we're now adopting more lower value items in those baskets, and that's driving corrugated consumption. I always help people remember the lower value items take up more space. And let's look at what that geometry does in the next slide. If you went back and compared what we might have bought back in the early days of e-commerce, we'd buy a hardback book or a DVD or something that was high value. We made a handful of purchases a year. It would come in one thin sleeve that was very basic just to get the product to our door. And you compare it to what's going on now with pantry filling, with large boxes arriving with multiple products inside them. And we're doing it on a weekly or maybe even twice a week basis. You start to see the way the corrugated consumption responds to the shifts in e-commerce purchasing trends from consumers. That's a big change. And that means that geometry and the beauty of the difference in cubic space and square footage of board favors all of us as we move ahead. Next slide. What's optimization going to mean to e-commerce? This idea that somehow e-commerce companies will get better at using corrugated and therefore use less of it. It's critical to understand that the optimization, while strategically important, is executionally challenged. Many of the e-commerce companies have difficulty in carrying out that strategy and putting it forward. Furthermore, the growth in total shipments is going to overwhelm and outstrip any of the changes that come from efficiency savings. Finally, the growth in e-commerce is going to come in grocery. It's going to come in those areas where frustration-free packaging, where ship-in-own container, and other opportunities, other alternatives simply are ill-suited to perform. clients continually talk to me about, but we're worried about what this will mean for what SIOC will mean for us in the future. The important thing to understand is more products will be shipping in more carriers to more destinations than ever before. The idea is to stay on trend with where those are all headed. Next slide. Another thing that we'll talk about a little bit today is specialization. The fact that many of our e-commerce partners are focused on very specialized presentation of the product to consumers. Those brand building experiences, those are the kinds of things that are enhanced by well-built, well-made, and expertly printed corrugated solutions. Furthermore, the future implies a greater reliance on rigid surfaces to deliver product. Anything that requires automation, that requires delivery automation or tactile response, they're always going to be favored by rigid surfaces that are common in the corrugated box world. We'll talk about that in some of the Q&A. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the past and the future. In the advent of the consumer economy during the last 2 generations, standardization was critical. It was important to have things that were simple, easily reproducible, that could be quoted out to multiple suppliers to maximize the efficiency and the cost to CPG companies and to brand owners. Standard sizing and standard print permitted that. It made it easy for the buyer and the procurement department to maximize their efficiency, in some cases to the detriment of the packaging supplier. But in the future, if we look at this next slide, we'll see that customization creates opportunities, and creates opportunities at different places in the supply chain. In the digital print world, we'll see that expanded offering touching both high volume and low volume presses allows for extreme quality in the print and variability, quick turnover, changeovers between flavors, varieties, and color. There's a massive opportunity in digital simplicity. In addition, there's a massive opportunity in logistics and tracking when tied to data management. But the value to individual customers needs to be defined so that consumers are able to benefit from all of these opportunities that exist in the digital print world. In the area of variable sizing, another important customization opportunity, we see changes in business models. We see a trade-off between cost, consistency, and unit cost variability. And you see challenges that arise around the area of manufacturing taking place in a fulfillment location. But this area of customization is really going to be critical in the coming wave of e-commerce, as consumers who have expressed desires for individuality, for personalization, and for the types of branded experiences that they're familiar with in all of their other interactions with suppliers to be extended to them in the e-commerce world as well. Next slide. What we're going to do now is, with that landscape, we're going to turn over the time to Ted Simotas from HP. When Ted's done, we'll have the opportunity to hear from 2 excellent manufacturers with great experience in this area, Mark Mathis of Vanguard Packaging and Louis DeJesus. And we'll be able to come back after those 2 speakers and have questions for all of us as we go on in today's presentation. So Ted, I'd like to hand some time over to you now. And Chelsea, would you continue to move forward with us?
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ron. So my name is Ted Simotas. I'm the director for what we call our corrugated division within HP. And prior to being at HP, I was in the corrugated industry for a long, long time with several different companies. last 12 years, prior to joining HP, I was with Georgia Pacific, and I was very involved in graphic corrugated packaging, as well as starting up a business for GP called Hummingbird, which is a digital packaging business. So I'm here today to talk about specifically digital printing and how it relates to this trend that Ron just laid out for all of us, which is this significant growth in e-commerce. E-commerce has become so ubiquitous, aggressive, pervasive in all of our lives as consumers. I do think it provides an incredible opportunity for the independent corrugated converters. And one of Ron's key takeaways, his bullet point number 3 on his first slide, was those converters with the right assets and the right capabilities are best set to win in this space. So Chelsea, if you click to the next slide, please. So I think Ron made a very compelling case that there's this big opportunity out there for corrugated converters to transform really their business and transform the purpose of that brown box shipper into a real opportunity to deliver to the brands a great advertising vehicle. I mean, you converters out there, you really have almost a responsibility now to form not just a great box making company, which many of you are great box makers, but also to create a company that can deliver content. You're almost like the cable company to some extent. And this ability now to deliver content on the brand's behalf to the consumer, all the technology necessary to do that and build that supply chain, that e-commerce packaging supply chain, if you will, that technology exists today. And I think as you make your decision on how you want to set that supply chain up for your customers, for the brand owners particularly, please be aware that the technology exists, and it's not just about the hardware, it's not just about the printers, it's about the end-to-end solution. So companies like HP, we're partnering with folks on the very front end of this experience, and I think you'll see Mark and Louis are going to talk a little bit about that front end here in a minute, but we're partnering with the likes of PXI Digital, Global Custom Source, and then of course tied into our printing technology, how that helps brands deliver their message to consumers, as well as back end on the converting side with the likes of Fosbury, E&L, Mark Whipboard United. So it's really about trying to figure out for yourself how to design and execute on a manufacturing capability, design capability, and information data management capability that delivers to your brands and to your brand owning customers, delivers to them this ability to distribute via e-com, and distributing via e-com is very difficult. Ron kind of alluded to a little bit of that there, where think about a bottle of shampoo or a fast moving consumer good product. It's very, very expensive to deliver that to a consumer on a one-off basis. I think the independent converters out there have a real opportunity to design supply chains and design solutions similar to, for those of you that have been in the display business, similar to that sort of advent or growth of the display business. It's very analogous to what's happening in e-com as retail went from local grocers to big box to the Walmarts, and now is moving very much into e-commerce supply chains. I think you guys are very uniquely positioned to take advantage of that if you design the right solution. So we want to be there to help you do that. Next slide, please. So this is just an example that a company called The Box Maker, one of our customers who has a HP C500 press, they took this very simple brown box with a label on it and converted it over to a versioned package to allow this particular brand to really deliver their message. And these brands all have an opportunity to pick their form of advertising. They've got choice points in front of them, right? They could do a social media campaign, they could do print advertising, television advertising, and so on. What better way to deliver on the box and in the box advertising and ultimately engage with consumers, particularly with a call to action and that kind of thing, where a consumer, she can scan the box, the inside or outside, engage back with the brand, potentially get a follow-on buy. So there's all this upside opportunity to use the box. And I think that landscape, I think, is wide open for the converters out there. I think you guys have a real opportunity to try to capture that space in a very significant way. Next slide, please. This is a cool example. And Louis is going to talk here in a bit, but this is an example where, in this case, the box really represents the brand. I mean, the box becomes the brand in this example. The lettuce, very difficult to, I guess, print on lettuce or market lettuce, but what better way to deliver the story about this customer, or about this grower up in the Great Lakes region? What better way to tell a consumer about their commitment to the environment, their commitment to farm to table, as an example, their commitment to wholesome products? By the way, using HP water-based inks, right, as an additional commitment to the environment and to food safety and sustainability. So really cool. And these guys are going to share, Mark and Louis could share with you many, many examples where brands large and small have effectively used the flexibility, the agility of digital printing, but more importantly of a digital packaging supply chain. They've really started to capture this and adopt this supply chain to make it easier to deliver via e-com and also make it more profitable, which is critical. Just I point out one last, it's not necessarily a case study as much as it is, last week we had a converter. They did 500 orders, printed 500 litho-like quality resolution orders, okay, on a C500 in 1 week. So just think about the power of that. And obviously that's, the catalyst or obviously the driver there is their ability to digital print. And I'll also point out that that particular converter, similar to what Louis is going to talk to you about, they're already in the e-commerce business themselves as a box maker. They're selling and they receive those 500 orders via e-com, via the internet. So design, procure, and execute on graphic corrugated packaging, all online, print on demand, convert on demand. Pretty neat stuff. Next slide, Chelsea, please. And, HP's part in this, we want to be, and we are a key part of the ecosystem in this development of this technology, but more importantly, working on behalf of you, the converter, setting up a platform, helping you build your platform to be the most effective converter, but also expanding your addressable market, allowing you to engage with brands. And here's an example here, our formation of Digital Pack with our converting partners around the world now gives a global platform to converters to open up their addressable market. The old days of 200 miles within your box plant, those days are gone. This opens up a whole nother opportunity, obviously. Your market is the world now. So it's really kind of cool to be a box maker, during this transformation. Next slide, please. And I'd encourage, there are some brands on the phone, I know that. So I'd encourage you guys to take a look at digitalpack.com. You'll see many, many case studies out there that these great converters have executed on using digital print. And many of them are e-commerce related. And again, I think tells a great story in terms of delivering that message ultimately to the consumer and creating value. Next slide, please. And now, Ron, you can introduce Mark, please.
Ted, thanks so much. That was really great information and outstanding overview of some real interesting case studies. We're going to ask Mark Mathis now, Vanguard Packaging, to step in and share some of his experiences in the digital print world. Mark, it's up to you now.
All right. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. While you all are taking a look at this picture of Brad Pitt, I'm going to do something that I normally do whenever I speak, which is give you a brief overview of who Vanguard is. That way you know the perspective that I am coming from. So we have about 825,000 square feet of manufacturing and fulfillment space here in Kansas City. Last year in 2019, we billed just under $200 million. We have sales and design offices in Bentonville, Arkansas, and St. Louis. We have a sales office in Guangzhou, China, and in Florida, and a customer service office in Phoenix. And we're currently prepping to add another sales and design office domestically here in the United States. Probably the key thing that I'd want you to take away from is that we are about 80% of our volume of our output, what I'll call trade sales of what we manufacture, is displays. Of the other 20% of that balance, by far the fastest growing segment is e-commerce. And that also includes some industrial packaging. I tell people we only take a box order if the salesman is duct taped to a chair, it falls in his lap and he can't knock it off. So we are not really big in brown box, but we put e-commerce into that category for now, and it is rapidly growing. So those of you that may have been in Dallas heard me say this, that whether it's display or e-commerce, or for that matter, even industrial packaging, our job is simple. It is to sell more of the customer's product. That's it. That's how we're graded by them, and that's how we grade ourselves, is are we helping them sell more product? So because of that, we see, well, let's go back just for a moment. So because of that, we don't see really any difference between designing a concept for a display or designing a concept for an e-commerce box. The end result is the same. Do we sell more product for our customer? If not, they don't need us, and they certainly don't need the higher price they're going to pay for us than they will for a simple brown box. So the last thing I'd say is the biggest difference between us and our C500, and I might add, we have a total of 5 digital presses. The C500 is just one of those. But the biggest difference between us and Louis at Company Box, or Richard Brown out at Boxmaker, or even say a Packlane that actually doesn't manufacture much but is primarily a broker of e-commerce boxes, we probably run 2 to 3 times the square footage in a month that they do, and virtually the rest of the e-commerce digital printers. But these guys can run 50, 60, 70 times more orders in a month than we do. So I throw that out because we tend to lean a little bit more toward the larger runs, and that's primarily because of the displays. So if we can advance, please. So most independents, let's face it, we don't want to go out and sell in Amazon or Jet.com or Walmart.com. And we do a lot of work with Walmart, but we don't call on Walmart.com. It just doesn't make sense for a company like ours to do that. We have this crazy concept here at Vanguard that we want to remain profitable. So that's why we avoid that type of work. So let's walk through what we think when we design concepts on, particularly for the C500. And this is an actual project that we did for an e-commerce company that we've known for many years as a retailer, but only recently as an e-commerce company. And again, I know some of you have seen this from Dallas, but I ran across the CEO of this company, and actually a very nice young lady who's a longtime acquaintance, and I heard of their new 200,000 square foot e-commerce facility. Quietly, their e-commerce division had grown to be, and I might say grew under the radar screen to be 10 times bigger than their retail outlet. And they have a large and very well-known retail outlet. They were using a packaging broker, a supply broker, for everything in their e-commerce needs, and that includes some brown boxes as well. So again, if you saw this in Dallas, this is going to be a very short Reader's Digest condensed version of what you saw there. So we started by ordering an item from them just to see how they were currently delivering their product. What you see on the screen is how that box arrived. So what was the message that the box was sending? What message was the customer then receiving? Was the experience better or worse for them, for the customer, if they had gone to the store versus receiving this package? Could we use the box to communicate back to the customer? And could we create that retail moment that occurs in the store when a purchase decision is made? How can we make that same visceral connection through the box? And again, as I said earlier, can we drive more sales? So the box, as you see, was actually the product shipper with a shipping label cleverly placed over the top of the box where the manufacturer's name was located. They could not have done less to create any kind of a connection with the customer if they tried. They just simply couldn't have done less. So where do you start when the customer has nothing? Can we go to the next slide, please? So as crazy as this sounded, we started by putting their name on the box. How many boxes do you get that have nothing on them? So when a box arrives at your doorstep, it has to compete with the clutter of other things being delivered by UPS. You remember the slide that Ron showed early on where 4 or 5 boxes are stacked up. So just like we have to remove our customer's product from the clutter of a retail shelf, we want to try to remove the clutter from the front step just as well. We want to create a visual moment that separates us from, say, an Amazon, and start to begin to build the excitement that you might have if you were in the store making that purchase. So we did something really crazy. We threw their name on the box. Here's the crazy part. They were blown away by this. They thought that was the entire thing we were going to propose to them, was simply putting their name on the box. Well, we didn't need a digital press to do that. We have a Flexo press that can do that. So I guess what this boils down to is the packaging supply broker never told them that putting their name on the box was even an option. So let's go to the next slide, please. The next step was to put the entire box into play here to create the excitement of a retail moment. That meant we had to use the whole thing, including the interior, to create the message. So when you look at this, look at the major flaps. The major flaps was where we tried to make that visceral connection with the customer. If you look a little closer, one of the things that there is an enormous amount of work that Ted Simotas can provide to you is the connection that's made when a human being sees another person's face. And Hewlett-Packard has tons of data on that. So while we took these pictures just off of the internet, this is just stock pictures, we tried to create the connection. So when the tape gets cut and the box is open, the first thing they see are other people doing the same activities that they want to do with the product they just ordered. So then we decided to use the minor flaps. On the left, you'll see where we tied it back to the store. And what you can't really see there is that store hours and location and phone number are on there as well. The other minor flap, we tied back to their loyalty program using a QR code. Now keep in mind that we want this box to do numerous things. And one of those is to help collect data on the customer. When they click on a QR code, they are voluntarily submitting their data back to, in this case, Rogers Sporting Goods. Then the click back can also be a trigger to send them immediately a coupon for their next visit. We want to continue to push the purchase through the system. Finally, what it does is it links them to the ability to send pictures of themselves or their friends or family members also hunting and fishing and being outdoors. So these stock photos would only be in the first round of packaging for them to be replaced by pictures of their own customers. Now that, I don't know how much more powerful that can be. So then we moved into the interior part of the box and we printed targets. Now, why did we do that? That might seem kind of crazy. Well, we wanted the box to be more than a shipper, and we even wanted the box to be more than a communication device. So we put the target on there so that the user could open the box. He takes his kids or friends outside, take them to grandpa's farm, take their 22s with them, and shoot at these targets. But look at what they're looking at. If I took 3 or 4 of my friends out to shoot at this box, those 3 or 4 friends are seeing the same thing. They're seeing the visceral connection from the pictures. They're seeing the store, they're seeing the name of the company and the rewards program. So we continue this on. Again, what's the purpose of all of this? It's to sell more product. Now, I might back up just a minute and make one other comment on the QR code and data being submitted. At a base level function, when you snap that QR code, these guys can immediately collect the data on where you were, what kind of phone you used, and when it took the picture. So let's say, for the sake of discussion, that 75% of these clicks occurred between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m. The vast bulk were done on an iPhone 10, and they were in suburban neighborhoods. They could quickly determine that their primary customer base is probably a white-collar worker in a suburban area that has a certain amount of disposable income. Flip that around, if it's at, let's say 2 a.m, and it's on a lesser valued phone and it's in a blue collar neighborhood, then the bulk of their customers would be most likely blue collar workers. And it allows them to begin to target their customers. So can we go to the next one, please? And now you see how the whole thing has progressed from the bottom, where you have the box that came in, to the entire program. And I might add that this entire process through our art department consumed maybe an hour and a half of time. To take a box and get 2.5 times the value for it? It's pretty cheap time by the art department. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is a display that is 100% digitally printed. Some of you may have seen it in a Walmart. So the display itself, I think it's rather obvious. We've gotten it off the clutter of the shelf and assisted in selling more product. But there's a lot of ways to sell more product. And one of those ways is to keep the cost of the display down as much as possible, because then the client is more inclined to order more displays during the year and sell more product. So one of the holy grails in displays is modularity. How can we get the most out of the purchase of cutting dies and plates and all of these things? So this entire display that you see in front of you was printed on RC500. I think we printed about 3,500 of these, which explains why we don't run a lot of orders, but a lot of square footage. So to make this the cheapest we can do, let's go to the next slide. Same display, same tooling. I think the only tooling that changed on this is the very center top part of the header where it says accessory. Totally different type of art now. So we move more from a cartoonish type of art. Remember what we said about the face and the connection that your eye will make with that face. So that was the one that followed the first one. Now, one more slide, please. There it is again. That was the third one. I think we've ran, 6 or 7 of these in a row, and they have literally not had to buy a new set of dies. And a program that was designed to run maybe 4 times a year is probably double that now, because we kept the cost down. So you can create the modularity that a customer wants in displays, not so much through the structural side of the design, but through the graphics side. And the digital printing in today's world, particularly in these single pass presses, allows you to get to that point. So that's all for me, Ron. I'll be available for questions at the end.
Mark, that's outstanding. Thanks so much. And I've got some questions we'll come back to for you at the end of the session. Let's move on now. Louis DeJesus from Company Box is going to spend some time going through their company's progression in the digital space. Louis, it's all yours.
Okay. Hey, Mark. Love your presentation. I love your profit concept. I wish more people would embrace that. So my name's Louis DeJesus, and in not order, I don't want to really age myself, but probably Ron and Ted, I don't know if Ted remembers the old Horner Waldorf days. So that's where I started, and then later that became Smurfit Stone Container. We do run two companies, Third Dimension and Company Box. Third Dimension is more of a traditional sales channel, and then Company Box is 100% dedicated to e-commerce. I'm telling you, I'm really happy today because actually today's my first day back to the office after 14 very long weeks. And my wife right now is doing cartwheels because she's happy that I'm gone. I'm joined today with Kyle, our president of Company Box, and he's actually also my son. Next slide. Company Box started 12 years ago, and we're located in, I want to do what I do is I want to do how our company journeyed and where we are today because of it. So we operate out of two facilities, one in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Geneva, Ohio. We're really well equipped. Just last week, we installed our Vega specialty folder gluer. Before we could run glued boxes, 300, 400 an hour of these specialty glued boxes. And now we can do them all the way up to 20,000 pieces an hour. So this was a tremendous addition. We have four Zune automated automated Zune tables. We have 4 Esco tables, 3 HP Cytex HDR presses, 2 flatbed die cutters, and of course, the pride and joy is HP page-wide C500 single pass press. This week, we're installing in Geneva a robotic Solarco, which actually allows us to do very large press work. But the key to all this equipment that we have, that we've always concentrated on, is that we need equipment that has immediately and quick setup. Next slide. When we first started in this digital space, Company Box could produce about 100 square feet an hour. And if you can imagine, 100 square feet an hour doesn't really produce very many boxes. Our website had 3 structure offerings, and now we progressed so we could print over 80,000 square feet an hour, which easily converts to 26,000 mailers. Our site has 35 structures, and because of the C500, we're now able to do litho print quality. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that our capacity has increased substantially. And because of that, we can pivot quickly and help our customers adjust to this new COVID world. As our customers concentrate on a safer and more personalized packaging as a way to connect, I think that the digital packaging equipment and this platform that we have is really well suited to meet these needs. Next slide. Indeed, the world has changed, but through all this, our mission has remained the same. And that is basically to maintain a user experience where the user can get instant pricing, online graphic tools for the beginners and experienced designers, provide innovative and problem-solving packaging solutions, create an atmosphere where the orders can be very short lead times. I mean, there are many instances where we get an order today and we're shipping it tomorrow. And this is a 4-color job. And then the other thing that we really want to try to figure out how to do is how we can do a lower cost total packaging cost. Next slide. Our journey has progressed to not only these higher speeds and these higher capacities, but in the process, I think what we've done is we've created one of the first true web to print platforms in the corrugated space. I know that this is very difficult to do because of so many variables, but what I'm talking on the corrugated web to print is what I'm trying to say is that we're now able to take all the non-value added functions associated with entering an order. We've automated all of those. And I'm talking about proofing, pre-press, scheduling, ordering a sheet stock. I mean, now we can order the sheet stock automatically. It cycles through and it tells our supplier what to order. All the invoicing. The key is that this automation is very vital to reducing costs and shortening the lead time and also delivering that better customer experience. Next slide. This slide just has a brief summary of some of our customers that have trusted us with their business and have enjoyed working with us. Next slide. In a few weeks, we are going to launch our Builder App 2.0. Now, we've been working on this for over a year. And if I told you how much money we'd spent on this, you would say I'm crazy. What this is going to do, it's going to give the customer a better experience by creating faster rendering, 3D preview of one-sided and inside printing. So now you can see the printing. If a customer chooses to print on the inside, they can also see the inside and see it in a 3D fashion. We're going to add a tremendous amount of graphic tools. The other thing we're going to do is that we thought that in order for a one-stop shop location, we thought that our site just didn't offer enough items. So we've added the customization of tapes, tissues, inserts. Think about inserts, labels. We're also going to be putting in pre-designed templates that are going to change seasonal. And we're going to have an increased emphasis on secure packaging. Now, to make all of this work, the existing software baselines just didn't have the horsepower. And so what we went to a brand new gaming technology, which the military uses for fast rendering and fast decision making. This is what we did. And the problem that we encountered and why it took such a long time is the amount of work and the amount of variability and the amount of effort that it took to have this program work with this baseline technology was much more difficult than I ever imagined. Next slide. So I coined a phrase, and Ron or Mark, I think you or Ron, you said it's a great phrase because it does summarize things. And it was, give me what I need when I need it and with no limitations. And so now with the progression of all these years, we can actually now do it 26,000 times every hour. Our business here is to supply custom printed packaging to we now have over 12,000 customers. And most of these customers are in the e-commerce space. Now, with this ever-growing business and the shrinking of traditional in-store sales, and I'm talking the B2C channels, it's forcing the packaging to play a larger role. And I'm saying a bigger lift as it relates to brand advertising and communication with a customer. And that is it. I hope that summarizes our site. Ron?
Louis, thank you. Boy, you have shared some great ideas and really given, I think, some outstanding viewpoints and vision, not just for this portion of the industry, but I think for the industry more broadly. So we want to talk a little bit about some questions that have already been prepared, but I'm also seeing some questions pop up on the Zoom group chat. So I want to remind you, if you've got questions and you'd like to ask them of the group as a whole or any one of the individual presenters, please put them in the group chat and we'll make sure that they get touched on. I've got some questions of my own, and we've got a few here. Yes.
Just a quick minute. For those that are on the phone, you can also do *9 if you *9 if you want to raise your hand to ask a question, and we can call on you. You can also raise your hand to ask a question and be called on the computer. And as well, you can post questions in the question box. And I have some questions that were sent to me privately, Ron. So when you get to that place, let me know and I can read those out as well.
Oh, great. Thanks, Taryn. That's outstanding. And group, we've got about 25 minutes, so we've got plenty of time to really go through a bunch of our questions here. So let me put this to Mark and to Louis, and just ask this first question. Tell us how you see digital packaging playing a role in times of uncertainty. What have you seen from your customers in the last several weeks? And then I'll touch on that as well.
Well, I guess I'll go first. If you think that some people in our industry fell behind during this period of shutdown, you're probably correct. And I think while digital can be seen as a safety net during these times, I feel there's just a lot more to it than being a safety net. First off, times like this recent lockdown have shown us it can be difficult to get all of the decision makers on deck for a new or special project or even a hot item that needs accelerated delivery. Digital gives corrugated producers literally an unparalleled speed based on our past to market, if for no other reason than it eliminates lead times. It eliminates lead time for printing plates, for printing dies, or label laminating, the process itself. One of the victims of the lockdown was lead time, and orders could be won or lost on who could literally ship the order. So going forward, as this whole retail environment opens back up, the issue of, and I'm focused more on retail for this answer, the issue of short lead times will persist. So there's a need to be fast on your feet, and that's only going to increase. So digital in general excels as customers move toward an order on demand system, which it's going to, regardless of this shutdown, we are moving toward order on demand. In fact, that may be digital's biggest selling point. I think it is for a machine like the C500. Order on demand allows for smaller volumes, which is going to improve our customers' cash flow, and it's going to require less space when they store it in their facilities, which also saves money. We've been in digital long enough to know that the lockdown for us didn't really look that much different than when everything was open, because the advantages of a machine like the C500 or digital in general, it works in good times and bad times.
Mark, thanks. Louis, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I say that probably there's been a shift where you're looking for solutions that are more tamper-proof. And so, and to address those, we've introduced the takeout restaurant box. We've actually produced, here it is, I don't know, maybe we can see it, a takeout pizza box. It's got a tab that's already locked in and no one can get to it. One of our customers, pizza restaurants, said that this was a perfect item to bring to them because they said they had one of the pizzas delivered to one of their customers, and the customer called and complained and said that somebody took a bite out of it. So
Now,
I
Louis,
think, what's that?
I have to step in here only to share with you some data that I saw not too long ago, saying that something like 20% or more of delivery orders are tampered with in one way or another. And so you are right on track.
I heard it was 30%, and
there you go.
So yeah, and if I can also share a small story that's real quick one. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to make it really quick. A friend of mine, and I thought about this. A friend of mine, his dad is a retired doctor, and for the last 8 weeks, he was bringing him food and all that stuff, and because he's all sequestered in his house. And so he told his son, he said, "Listen, I don't need you to bring me any more food. I got it all taken care of." He goes, "Well, Dad, how you doing?" He goes, "Well, I went on this site. I plugged in this location. They have pictures of product. You click on it, it tells you the price. They deliver it the next day." He goes, "It's called Amazon." He goes, "It's the most amazing thing in the world." He goes, "You ought to use it, son." So I think what's happened is that set of population that has been resistant to moving on to the next digital phase and feel more comfortable with it. I think this pandemic has shifted that. So where more people are now, a larger part of that population is now comfortable by using online ordering and subscriptions.
I think that's great, Louis. I think we're seeing that absolutely as you've described. Hey, I'd like to toss in a question, and this is for Ted. Ted, I know that traditionally there's been lots of considerations at play in the post-print versus pre-print decision that corrugated box makers need to go through. Which type of machinery will they choose to invest in? And that's repeating itself now in the digital world of pre-print versus post-print being a very big decision point for folks. I'm wondering if in the digital space that calculus changes any. How do we evaluate pre-print versus post-print alternatives in this technology, whereas we might have evaluated differently in a flexo world years ago?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. That's a great question. So I think when you think about post-print, and Mark did an excellent job there of demonstrating that, and Louis as well, that with a post-print digital press, what you're really delivering to the market is this incredible flexibility, this incredible response time. So I would say that post-print, similar to, for those of us that were around when high quality post-print was Flexo was competing with Flexo preprint, similar in the digital space, it still allows the ultimate point of use, print on demand, convert on demand capability for a broad range of board grades and a broad range of flutes, as an example. So that really gives you the extreme flexibility of post-print. However, with digital preprint, it also positions a company that wants to go with preprint or is more accustomed to running in a preprint form. It gives them an extreme degree of flexibility versus Flexo preprint. So to some extent, the two manufacturing methods, preprint and postprint, they're more merging. They're closer together today than they were previously. So as an example, we have customers that have our T1100 series press, and they're turning around display orders, for instance, in 5 or 6 calendar days, down to sheet quantities of 500, 250, 500 sheets, believe it or not, coming off of a preprint press and then subsequently a corrugator. So that's clearly different than what a Flexo preprint press can achieve in that supply chain. So there's a lot of similarities to the competing technologies or competing platforms, and they're analogous to the Flexo development years ago, but there's also quite a bit of difference. And it really has to do with this ability now to go from discrete manufacturing to batch manufacturing on either platform. That's really the big innovation from a manufacturing perspective.
Ted, that's really great information. I want to take what you just developed and I want to throw it to Mark for a minute, and Louis for you as well. You know, the question that comes up often in my mind is the difference between scale and doing what Ted just described at massive quantities versus scope. How do you focus in on those smaller plays? And I'm just curious, you know, do you all look at that scale versus scope challenge with digital differently than you would with a conventional press?
Oh, absolutely. You would look at it differently. Until just the last few years, your options for graphics were Flexo or litho-lamination. Excuse me. Either one of those had cost associated to them that made small volumes very expensive. So digital has flattened the cost curve, if you think about it. Whether it's 10,000 pieces or 10, the cost curve is much flatter than it used to be. And I think that's the biggest difference. Again, Louis and I are probably the opposite ends of the spectrum. We run much fewer orders, but a lot more square footage. There's no right or wrong. There simply isn't. And I think both Louis and Vanguard and maybe Boxmaker, we will all ultimately work more toward a center of the spectrum to some degree.
Got it. Louis?
You know, I didn't know you were going to ask that question. But you have something that I don't know. I just drew this up this morning, and hopefully you can see it. I don't know if you can see this. Boom. Okay. Up. Okay.
There you go.
When I was working for Smurfit Stone Container, and you know, we're going back 40 years ago, they said that the cost for packaging, the box is the smallest cost component. So if you take a look at your hand, the box is only 20%. The rest of it consists of obsolescence, inventory costs, tooling, all those various numbers that are impacting the total cost. And so what has changed now is if I take a look at the new world, so if you can see here, I am doing it. Okay. The costs have shifted to where the other components have become a smaller part of the total equation. And so the obsolescence has dramatically reduced. the tooling could possibly completely disappear, and the outside influence of cost, that's what I'm saying, marketing has now penetrated the finger, the big finger. And so what we're saying, what I'm trying to say is that the box unit cost has to go up because it's doing a heavier lift. It's doing the lifting of reducing obsolescence. It's doing the lifting of having less inventory. It's doing the lifting of smaller runs. It's doing the lifting of communication with the customer. And so I think what we have to somehow communicate is that there has to be a shift of dollars taken away from other forms of advertising, whether it be social media or whatever. We have to convince our customers to invest more in that unit cost, because that unit cost is actually doing a lot of the work now.
Louis, that's great. I'd like to jump over now and take some of the questions off of the group chat. I think some great ones have popped up, and I'd like to highlight those. Lillian asks the following: I'd like to find out about collaboration. I own a social enterprise that helps minority brands reposition their packaging. I'd like to know how to go about collaborating with these brands, with as many these packaging companies, with as many minority brands to improve their packaging as I can. What's the collaboration step for companies like yours, Louis, Mark, and Ted? How do you get to use your resources to help the collaboration process?
I guess to stick with the same line of speakers here, I'll go first. There is no right or wrong with digital. So I need to start by saying that. We've chosen our path. Louis chosen his path. The rest of the people doing it have chosen their own path. The reason that we have not gotten into doing what Louis and Boxmaker and Packlane do is because we feel like when we insert, we have a very extensive graphics and structural lab. We have probably close to 30 people that do nothing but that. And we believe in inserting these people and their skills into the process as early as possible in the conceptualization of whatever it is we're doing. So we felt like we wanted to not remove the people part of the collaboration from the process. Now, having said that, that will drastically eliminate the volume of projects that we can do, whereas Louis can do 50, 60 times the projects we can because of that. And that then tends to drive us to a much bigger potential project or order. So again, there's no right or wrong, but that's why we've stayed in the area that we've stayed in.
So scoping a niche brand to an entity that's prepared to deal with higher number of SKUs might be one way to look at how they can interact.
Well, again, higher number of SKUs is perfect for digital printing. So if we were collaborating with Lillian and she had a high number of SKUs, even though the volume might be lower, our collaboration would be to how to tie all those SKUs together to create the common message she wants her customers to get.
Great. Louis, on your side?
The way I see that, you know, a smaller company or a startup can collaborate with our company is that because of digital, you're able to look big. You're able to create a package that's just as good as Apple's package. And so when the customer sees your product, you know, in the old days, you could tell that this was a startup. You know, they couldn't afford to buy the long litho runs. They had to run, you know, 30,000 pieces. She could order 3 pieces from me and it's going to look just as good as the Apple one that they ran truckloads. And so by collaborating with a digital supplier, the small startup can resonate immediately and look big immediately with the first order.
Ted, do you want to talk a little bit about the startup approach and then what you're doing on these large, massive CPGs?
Sure. So number one, Lillian, in terms of if your vision or your intent of your business is to help minority companies help brand themselves and grow their business, kind of like what Mark talked about. It's all about growing their sales, right? Ultimately, one of the cool things about this digital environment, particularly from a design standpoint, is from my perspective, I think it democratizes design. You know, and there's no, from my perspective, design and graphics and visuals are really in the eye of the beholder. And this now ability to do this quickly, fast, and fail fast. So your smaller company, let's say, that's trying to get their name out there, trying to get their product out there, because of the speed and the flexibility and the cost to change graphics, it's so much lower in this environment than in a traditional analog environment. They can fail fast. Put a package out there to tell a certain story. It either works or it doesn't work. They can do their A/B testing, things that big consumer products companies spend millions of dollars on. You now have that capability to deliver that to your customers, to allow them to do their own A/B testing in a real world environment with real consumers. And they'll know very quickly. They're going to get instantaneous feedback. In terms of how large brands do this, large brands are doing this, and large brands are using the box via digital printing to do a lot of social, you know, cause marketing, you call it, or social awareness as an example, because that's in their interest, right? So a good example, and I'll only talk about things that I'm authorized to speak about from these brands, but go to digitalpack.com and look at one particular case study there that Smirnoff conducted, the brand Smirnoff, which is owned by Diageo, a very large spirits company. And their commitment and their focus on their target market for that particular brand of vodka, they've heavily invested in commitment to the LGBTQ community. And look what they did, delivering multiple campaigns focused on that community by using versioned graphics. Every box is different, right? And they're really trying to send a message to that community that they want them to drink more vodka, which is, hey, it's great. But so there's a good example. You'll see many, many case studies on digitalpack.com also that drive towards this social marketing, cause marketing, and really deliver a message on behalf of the brand, but most importantly, deliver some inclusion to the consumer. And Mark's example there with his sporting goods box for people that are into the shooting sports, there's a great example of how that box can really be targeted to certain demographics or certain, in support of even certain causes, as another example. Maybe there's someone there that, I don't know, supports the shooting sports or wants to see the growth that, or just promoting that business and those products to certain groups that they previously couldn't reach out to cost effectively.
Yeah,
So
Ted, those are
a lot
great.
of
Hey, Ron.
Those are great examples and a great resource. In the few moments we have left, Taryn, go ahead.
We have a couple questions that are in the audience that came to me privately, so I'm going to post them, but I'm going to suggest that we call on one person to ask, and then if somebody has something else that they need to add to it, that of the panelists that need to add to it, we'll go from there, but we'll start with just, you know, one person per question.
You bet.
How do each of the manufacturers, this is from Tony, how do each of the manufacturers automate the pre-press side of things? Is it as easy as a digital presses claim, or did you have to use other systems to automate files going to press? Mark?
Probably a question.
Might be a better Louis question, actually.
Okay, Louis?
Yeah, that's a question. You know what I'm going to do with this one? I'm going to turn this one over to Kyle, because he's the one that's really been involved on that. And I'm going to swing him because he can give us some of our secret sauce here.
Okay, Kyle?
All right, let me get this in play. All right, can you actually ask that question again?
How do you automate the pre-press side of things? Is it as easy as a digital presses claim, or did you have to use other systems to automate files going to press?
Sure. So in terms of automating the complete pre-press side of it, we do have to use other third-party services to make it work with our complete system. So from a standpoint of the press being able to do it all, there are tools and tricks in there that you can do that. But from our standpoint, we had to get other third-party software linked up so that it runs smoothly through our system. We've, we've worked tirelessly through making this work perfectly in our system, in our environment. We don't have the secret sauce necessarily that works for everyone, but it works perfectly for us. So I think that kind of answers that question.
This one's for you directly, Mark. What kind of, this is from Michaela, what kind of results came out of the enhanced unboxing experience for Rogers, the Rogers company?
They're just getting going on it because they had to eat up all the other stuff they had already on the floor. So ask me that question in a couple of months.
Okay, Ron?
Hey, can I throw one other thing in though?
Yes.
To add to what Kyle and Louie said, to give another direct answer to Tony. And that is that we had to hire more artists, and we created a 4-person department specifically for pre-press for the digital press. So yes, it is a little more complicated, sorry, Ted, than typical digital press people will make it out.
Mark, if I can add to that comment, because of what we've done. So let's say we grow 100% a year, our digital orders. We've actually reduced our pre-press people. So we're actually going the other way because we're letting the system do a lot of the work. We're actually letting the system send out the automated proof and the signatures come back to us automatically. The only thing that we really usually get involved in is that we have a set of standards of what we will print and not print. And if it violates any of those standards, we reject the order. So we have to have the human eye intervene there. But that's about the only place we intervene. We're trying to automate that too. But we're not going to print any pornography. We're not going to print any anything that violates any kind of religious rights or any tear or anything that violates that is on the fringe. We flag it and we won't print it. And I'm telling you, we hold to that pretty true.
So guys, we're at the 75-minute mark. What I'm gonna make an executive decision. We're gonna stay online and keep answering questions. If you want to stay, we'd love to have you. If you do have to leave, we understand. This will be recorded, and you will get a copy of the recording, so you can jump to this part of it if you missed anything. We're at the 12:15 mark, so I just want to let everyone know. Ron, back to you.
Thanks, Taryn, and thanks for the extra time. 2 quick questions we had. One, did you see change in the demand for subscription boxes following COVID-19? Has the subscription box business been impacted by more people at home, more folks wanting to purchase subscription boxes? I'll throw that to Mark or Louie.
Yeah, we have not, and I think it's just because a lot of the sudden spark on subscription boxes has just popped up because of the COVID-19 lockdown, which means it's probably not gone long enough for these things to become living, breathing organisms yet.
Sure.
Will we by the end of the year? Yes. Right now, no.
Louie?
We have seen a spike on particular things that were people that are buying subscriptions where you can do something at home, especially if it involves how do I keep my kids busy. So those those subscriptions have really gone up. The other thing that, like I mentioned before, the secure piece, the secure mailers has gone up, and we've seen and we have a product called Snap the Pack, which basically has a glue strip, a 1-inch double-sided glue strip, and a tear strip. And that box is tamper-proof. And so we've seen a big increase on that. And the other reason that also has increased is because it also gives you the illusion of 2-sided printing. So I think I got one here. So similar, something like this has gone up. And basically you have a tear strip. Well, that didn't work out really well. And then when the customer opens it up, the box is printed, but it's still a 1-sided printing.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of stuff has gone up considerably for us.
Right, creative structural design that enhances what you're doing graphically.
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me ask another quick question here. Mark, I loved what you said about cutting through the clutter. Have you seen an increase in requests for graphic appeal, for visual creativity and high quality print? And how do you orchestrate meeting that demand?
Well, to answer your first part of your question, yes. And then how do you orchestrate it? There's two answers there. There's the way we did it before the middle of February and the way we're having to do it now. And hopefully Louis, we just opened up today full time for everyone. We had just been box making or corrugated producing people only up until today. So how we would normally do it again is collaboratively by incorporating particularly our conceptual graphic artist people first. Okay, once the concept then is developed, it goes to structure to match the conceptual art. And then finally, we will clean the art up and give them a finished box straight off of the digital press that it will be printed on. And the reason I say that is because the C500 is a water-based ink machine, whereas our other 4 presses are UV. So we have to factor in whether they want high gloss, a satin finish, whether the toxicity of the photo initiators in UV is an issue or not. So all that gets done in step 3. So conceptual art first,
Sure.
structural design second, finished art third.
And
Mark,
those
go ahead,
so
Ron.
sorry, those enhancements that you're making in collaboration with the client, how is that process received? Because I know for many clients, they understand that when it comes to litho and flexo, but they may be doing a digital job for the first time. So what's that education and coordination process like for you?
We don't start as if it's going to be digital. I know that sounds crazy, but we don't start that way. We start for the look that the customer is after. We want to get as close as we can to how the customer sees that box. Then we will work in the differences between a litho label, digital, satin finish, high gloss, whatever at that point. That is actually more along the lines of the visual look of what we're making more than the message. We work on the message first.
Great. That's interesting. I think that's exactly the kind of vision that brand owners and retailers are looking for, is executing on the vision. Taryn?
There's a question here for Louis, but Mark, since you were talking on this topic, I'm gonna jump to this question first, then go back to Louis. They wanted to know, Tim wants to know, are you designing all of your artwork for your customers, or do you enhance what is brought to you? Main question being, do your customers give your graphics team the freedom to offer a better graphic solution?
You know, Tim, it's a wide spectrum. We have some customers that provide 100% of it and don't even think of changing it. And then we have people that come in and say, we don't have an idea or a clue how to take the next step. And the example of the Rogers box would be an example of someone in that category. But life is kind of like a bell curve, and most of these things fall in the middle. And again, don't confuse, and this goes back to what I was telling Ron a minute ago, don't confuse the message with the art. They are two different things. Start with the message and the art will start to fall in place.
Louis, there's 2 questions here for you. You mentioned you're launching Builder App 2.0. When did you launch Builder App 1.0? And then this follow-up to that question, and this is from Charlotte, you also mentioned it was a very large investment. What drove you to decide to make that investment?
Builder 1.0 started, and actually I would say that was 4 years ago. About 4 years ago. And the reason we made the enormous investment in this new Builder app is that we thought we want to take a leadership position in this market. And in order to do that, we felt that we wanted to enhance the user experience. And by that, I'm saying faster renderings, faster turnarounds, adding all those other items that I said that we were adding, such as a tissue, custom tapes, and all those other things. And that all required that we build a brand new Builder app. So the Builder app that we currently have on our site, we're scrapping. and that was a very large investment when we made that one also. But we just thought it was, if we wanted to get to the next level, we had to make the commitment, and we did.
Thank you.
And let me go back to the other thing. The other thing is that the Builder 1.0 would not allow us to do preview of two-sided printing. So that was a big problem. With the increase in demand of two-sided printing, we knew we needed to make a change there also. So the new Builder app does allow preview of two-sided printing.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Mark, as a follow-up to the question from Tim, are you charging for these graphic services?
You know, it's funny. I had an artist one time who was an individual freelance artist, absolutely just ripped me to shreds. Our industry does not charge for these services. So here's how we do it. We do charge for these services, and if they place an order, that invoice is completely credited out.
Louis?
I should not bear the cost of designing a program for them to take to West Rock to complete. So if they buy the product, we credit out the cost.
Louis?
And Mark, I've seen very similar approaches. That's a very common sense approach for this kind of industry, for sure.
Louis, did you want to add something?
Typically, we do charge for services. Sometimes my anxiousness to get the order tells me not to charge for the service. So we just had a particular instance where this is a very large opportunity, and the customer came to us. It's going to be in all the Lowe's stores, and I was pretty anxious to get it. So he said, well, we're being charged X dollars to do all the marketing, or excuse me, the brochures, the artwork development, the structure, and all that stuff. And it was a large number. And I'm talking to the owner, and he goes, so Louis, I heard that you can do that. How much are you going to charge me to do that? And I said, absolutely zero. Give me the damn business. So I caved, but in this instance, we're getting the order, and it's going to be in 2,000 stores. It is a massive order. You know, it's going to be a couple $200,000 or more. So, you know, it all depends.
I don't have any more questions here. Ron, do you have any that you want to add?
You know, I could go on, but I really do appreciate everybody's time today. Ted, Mark, Louis, you've done a great job.
This was fun.
All the questions that came in were outstanding. I'm just impressed with the work that I see going on in the industry today. And more importantly, I'm very excited and very positive about where I see the graphic portion of our industry headed. We're in for some very exciting times, and I can't wait to be a part of it. Watch all of you take it forward. Taryn, back over to you.
I also want to say thank you to HP. The reason why you were able to come to this webinar free of charge is HP sponsored this event, and I want to really thank you for all the information you've provided, for keeping it very digital and e-commerce focused. And Ted, is there anything you want to add?
No, just hey, thanks for everybody for attending. And also I did want to just say thanks to the corrugated converters, the AICC members, for quite honestly, for keeping your plants running and taking care of your employees safely, and supporting the community during this COVID time. We're a critical industry, and I think you guys are a testament to that performance and that expectation. I think it's great. Thanks.
Just as a reminder, you'll all be receiving a recording in the email that you provided us when you registered. If you registered directly with HP, you'll have to get it from HP, but we'll be providing the link to them as well. And I look forward to seeing you all on our next call. You can check out AICC's calendar of events to find out what's coming up. We got a lot planned.
Thank
You all
you.
have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, it's fun.